was lured there. I was coaxed there, coerced there, under false and fraudulent, conditions and expectations.
And it was it was then that Jeffrey Epstein assaulted you?
That's right.
Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse in a civil court. He's been accused by many women. You don't believe any of that?
I think the most serious thing I've heard about him has been the E. Jean Carroll allegation that he sexually assaulted her in a Bergdorf dressing room.
30 other women accused him of the exact same thing.
There are other women who have said...
I know, I've interviewed some of them. I don't give a about Trump getting handsy with somebody 20 years ago.
Within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door, and his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them...
I mean, he says he does that to women.
Having a normal conversation.
Yeah, I believe he was taken out to protect somebody from whatever dirt Jeffrey had on them.
And do you think that person may have been a president or a former president or somebody high up in the government?
I wouldn't dismiss that.
Trump ignores questions from reporters about the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Mr. President, why not go further than just unsealing this?
Mr. Speaker, you guys are so weak that you won't even vote to release the files. It's 11:20 p.m. in the middle of the night, and
gentlelady will suspend. The gentlelady will suspend. The House is not in order.
Agenda through Congress and the
gentlelady will suspend. The House is not in order. Gentlelady's recognized for 1 minute.
I like her an awful lot.
You guys are so weak that you won't even vote to release the files. It's 11:20 p.m. in the middle of the night.
You know where your kids are?
The lady will suspend. The House is not in order.
Agenda through Congress.
This is a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific crimes. She went on with Amy Goodman. Of course, the survivor. All the other clips I'm going to play you coming from CNN, mainstream outlets, but the actual survivor had to go on Democracy Now! I wonder why she's not being platformed by more mainstream outlets.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Missing in much of the MAGA frenzy over the Jeffrey Epstein files are the voices of survivors of the sexual abuse he perpetrated against them. Many, like our next guest, have joined the call for transparency and for the Trump administration to release the files as promised. This comes as Virginia Giuffre, an outspoken survivor of sex trafficking by Jeffrey Epstein, died apparently by suicide at age 41 in April. She was the first survivor to come out publicly against Epstein.
Virginia Giuffre did not kill herself.
Ghislaine Maxwell, who remains in prison. She also sued Prince Andrew for sexually assaulting her when she was 17. The disgraced prince was forced to step away from his royal duties and settled with Giuffre in 2022. Her family said in a statement, quote, Virginia was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. She was the light that lifted so many survivors, unquote. Just last week, when the FBI and Department of Justice announced there was
the whole thing is suspicious.
Client list, it also said Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims over 2 decades, far more than previously known. For more, we're joined by Teresa Helm, who is a survivor of sexual abuse by Jeffrey Epstein, facilitated by Ghislaine Maxwell. She was assaulted by Epstein in the early 2000s. She now works as the Survivor Services Coordinator for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Her 2024 piece for Newsweek is headlined, "I'm a Jeffrey Epstein Survivor. The documents are an opportunity." Thank you so much for joining us. You, Teresa Helm, have talked about the dangers of grooming. As you see all of this taking place, the uprising within the MAGA movement, lost are what sexual violence survivors go through. Talk about how you first met Jeffrey Epstein, how you were brought to him, how you were groomed.
Well, hello, good morning. I can certainly talk to that. So I was attending college out in California at the time and was a full-time student and a full-time employee there. And so that began the process of recruitment to grooming, passed along the line from various people as far as, this is an opportunity that I'd like for you to see if you're interested in and go talk to this person. So after speaking with a couple young women about an opportunity that thought I was being blessed with at the time, I eventually met with Ghislaine Maxwell, who really, what she did was pretty astounding in the fact that within a day, I was convinced that I was in a safe, healthy, wonderful environment, blessed with an opportunity to pursue a career that I had only dreamed of having. In fact, that was my dream, to do what she had stated I would do alongside her, working for her. She was very polite and kind. She built trust in a very, within hours, I thought that I had really landed the opportunity of a lifetime. My family was very pleased that I was there interviewing with her, which is what the intention, that's what I thought I was there for, was an interview, and things went so amazingly well. And then she was so successful in all of that, very, I would call it, master manipulation. She was very calculated in her craft and did it very well. I was very young. I mean, I was an adult, 22 years old. However, I had such big dreams and aspirations and determination, and really wanted to make the most of this opportunity that I thought that I was getting, to the point where at the end of my time with Ghislaine Maxwell, although I hadn't known that there was a partner, as she referred to him, that I would be meeting at the end of my time with her. I hadn't heard Jeffrey or any other person's name the entire time, from beginning sitting behind the desk at work in California at the college, to meeting Sarah Cullen at the beach, to who then introduced me to Ghislaine. I had no idea that there was a final person that I was going to go meet. And once I learned of him by the name of Jeffrey, I did not, I paused and thought about some things, waved any kind of red flag in my mind, because again, she was Ghislaine was so good at what she had done and built that trust in me. And so then I walked myself to Jeffrey's home later that day to what I thought was to interview with him, without really a lot of question, actually being quite excited, because I thought, well, if I was so successful here with Ghislaine, which he has really made me believe that I have been, now I get the opportunity to go complete this, like a second round of the interview. And that was really, I walked myself into tragedy. I had no idea. I actually should, and I will reframe that. I didn't walk myself into tragedy. I was lured there. I was coaxed there, coerced there, under false and fraudulent, conditions and expectations.
And it was there. It was then that Jeffrey Epstein assaulted you?
That's right. They're in his very big, beautiful home there in Manhattan.
First meeting? Goddamn.
The home that Ghislaine was raving about after I had been complimenting her on her home and speaking about the different various buildings and the architecture and how much I enjoyed it and comparing different cities to New York. And then she raved about his. If I thought hers was great, wait till I see his. Yeah, so it was there. Mm-hmm.
So you have joined the call for the Epstein files to be released. Can you explain why you feel this is so important?
Where I stand with all of this is in, utter solidarity with survivors of this entire nightmare that's just been going on, ongoing for decades with these people that have gotten away with so much for so long, whether it was a failure of the system back in the 90s, whether failure of the system again in the early 2000s. There are so many women and at the time, even, children that have been harmed by these people. I really urge everyone to focus the commitment, the attention, all this time, effort, and energy onto bringing to light what needs to bring to light for these survivors and their healing, and less about political weaponization of anything, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people's lives, and it should not be weaponized either way in any administration, no matter who's in control at the time, who did what when, who's doing what now. Transparency is key, because we cannot move forward as a society and as a culture without these fundamental changes of doing the right thing and holding people accountable, because we can't continue to have systems of power that just get away, or people, whether it's a system or a person. We cannot continue to have these people or systems continue to get away with anything that they can get away with, because they're skating through, they're dodging accountability. There's too much money involved. So, people silence through money. We have got to change it's degrading our society to continue to allow these predators and perpetrators to get away with harming so many people.
I am convinced at this point that our intelligence agencies knew about it, possibly used it as blackmail, and that's the reason why for the cover-up. The Democrats didn't release it when they had power. Yeah, that's why. And probably Mossad is connected to it. We have every reason to believe this. I don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist to say this. And do I think that the FBI was out here actively raping children? No, but FBI agents knew people were raping children, and they didn't do anything about it. They used it to their advantage. And that causes our entire national security apparatus to just crumble to the ground. Epstein's ex on CNN.
Ex-girlfriend speaking out tonight. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s, has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993. Here's what she told our Sunland Serfati when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of. Then they were just on me the whole time, and I froze.
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game. Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now.
It was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. Really? Do you think we fell out of a coconut tree?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
First time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald, and he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about?
Yeah, they were.
What was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
Well, there was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened.
That's just all the time in Trump world. He's always unwell and upset. Had to narrow it down quite a bit.
He was late to pick me up, and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghislaine and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghislaine in his house. She would come wafting in and out, the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. And they were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein. I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, and before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened, I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the two of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have, and now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything, and he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you. And he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower, and within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door, and his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them...
I mean, he says he does that to women.
Having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking 90, this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And, when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark way, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you know, you go into shock. So I froze, and it was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes, and then we got back in the elevator, and Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue, and he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, "Why did you let him do that?" And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment, and I was confused.
Why did you let him do that?
So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos, which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you looked back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with you know, photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And
that shouldn't be just a nonchalant thing. Like, oh, this just happens in this industry. That is shameful.
Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze.
It was a bet. That's why he was mad. He lost the bet. He thought his girlfriend was going to fight back. Damn. What a sick game.
I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, you know, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape.
And tonight, if you're aware, President Trump has filed this libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over its reporting that there was this note bearing Trump's name as a signature and an outline of a naked woman that was included in a 50th birthday album for Epstein in 2003, a note that also depicted an imaginary conversation between the two men. And part of it reads, quote, Donald saying, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it, Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that the last time I saw you." And then finally, Donald.
Can I show this? I don't even know if I can. I shouldn't, probably. This is what an artist, based on the description, has drawn up, and you see it, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's believable, I guess.
A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Trump called that letter fake. He said it was out of character for him because he never wrote a picture or drew a picture in his life. Wrote a picture, I think he said.
No,
it's not his kind of language. Based on your time with both men, does that sound out of character to you?
And within minutes of him saying that he doesn't draw pictures, and what was it, like 10 pictures in fucking black marker, exactly like what was described, it came out.
You.
What, are you kidding me? I know what they were up to together. It happened to me. I was polygraphed. I have the post-assault postcard with a love note. So I have the receipts. Where are Donald Trump's receipts? Where are they? I know what they were up together, and I know what that means. It's very clear. It wasn't baking or fishing.
Well, Stacey Williams.
That was Epstein's ex. Also a survivor. I shouldn't have discounted her experience. Also a survivor of assault from Trump and Epstein. But hey, all these victims, all these children that were victimized by Trump and Epstein, Megyn Kelly doesn't care.
I just want to understand something clearly. Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse in a civil court. He's been accused by many women. You don't believe any of that?
I think the most serious thing I've heard about him has been the E. Jean Carroll allegation that he sexually assaulted her in a Bergdorf dressing room.
30 other women accused him of the exact same thing.
There are other women who have said...
I know, I've interviewed some of them. But look, the things I heard were included things like he got handsy on an airplane. Now, I don't know whether that happened or it didn't, but do I find that a deal breaker?
I believe it.
A possible politician? Not really. At least I reported on their stories and did them the courtesy of bringing them to air in front of millions of people and let the audience make up its mind. My problem is more with these Democrats who will bury these allegations against their candidates or their candidates' spouses and then play holier than thou.
Jesus.
Looking at Donald Trump.
Do you see yourself as a journalist still? Or would you not describe yourself like
I'm
that
still
anymore?
A journalist. I mean, I break news all the time. And when I sit with Trump or anybody else in the administration, I ask tough questions. I mean, as recently as September of 23, I interviewed Trump and he got so mad at me, he didn't talk to me for 6 or 7 months. So it's not, look, it's a tough job to do. You have to be able to hit the people you admire. And I do. You know, I've hit them all. Right before the election, I ripped on Trump's Madison Square Garden rally as too brotastic and got specific about why. You have
too brotastic.
If you haven't sold your soul, you have to be willing to criticize the people, even that you admire, on your quote side. And my owning my bias by going out there on stage with Donald Trump and saying I'm voting for him and you should too is a bonus when it comes to my credibility.
My eyes are rolling so far in the back of my head.
And they can filter everything I say through the appropriate lens. What typically happens in journalism is they say they have no bias and then they just work it out in the printed word or on their shows without owning it. But the audience knows it and it creates a distrust and a divide. When it comes to Trump and me,
wow.
My own personal opinion is most of the allegations against him are much more complicated than the mainstream media would have you believe. And I don't think Donald Trump is a rapist or a sexual assaulter. I do think
he's been adjudicated as such, ma'am.
He's taken inappropriate liberties with women and gotten handsy with them in a way he's owned himself. Okay? Years ago when he was a celebrity,
what he described on the Access Hollywood tape is literally sexual assault. You don't believe he sexually assaulted women, but you believe he got handsy without consent, which is literally sexually assault. I'm sorry. You're an idiot. I fucking hate you. You're just carrying water for Donald Trump because you're a partisan hack. Fuck you, Megyn Kelly.
And it is what it is. That's the past.
It is what it is.
It's just about so much more than that. We are talking about how many people dying at the southern border because of the invasion that we've suffered under Joe Biden. We're talking about Laken Riley, whose killer was let in under Biden.
Fucking wow.
Down to Georgia, where he murdered her. I don't give a shit about Trump getting handsy with somebody 20 years ago. I want someone who will close the border, which he has. I want someone who will keep boys out of my daughter's sports, which he has. I want someone who will stand up to the insane DEI policies so that white kids will stop hearing in school that they're born with some original sin from which they cannot recover, which he has.
They live in an alternate reality. If you were not with us when we watched the Jubilee before we came on, Mehdi Hassan with the 20, like they live in a different reality. I've been white genocided, the guy was saying. It's absurd as you're advocating actual genocidal policies against people who are different than you. You have the audacity to sit across the table from a brown man and say you're the one that's being genocided out of existence. It's absurd. Thread says he's going to start drinking. I say light one up, tip one back. Are you ready for this one? Let's hear from Epstein's brother.
Because this is not about me. This is about Jeffrey and what happened to Jeffrey. So I don't need to be seen. My location doesn't need to be known because, again, this is not about me.
All right. So what do you believe? You've been very outspoken lately. What do you believe actually happened to your brother?
I believe he was killed because I believe that after a day after he died, because when he first...
Jeffrey Epstein's brother, straight up. First question. I'm gonna need to get higher for this. First question, straight up.
Well, I have received threats through the years, but it's also because this is not about me. This is about Jeffrey and what happened to Jeffrey. So I don't need to be seen. My location doesn't need to be known because, again, this is not about me.
All right. So what do you believe? You've been very outspoken lately. What do you believe actually happened to your brother?
I believe he was killed because I believe that after a day after he died, because when he first died and I heard on CNN that he was found, dead from a assumed suicide, I was traveling when I heard that, and the government didn't notify me as they claimed they did. I heard it on CNN. And I had no reason to doubt that he committed suicide because he was in prison. I know he was facing a potentially long jail sentence. And I know he wouldn't want to live that way. And he had no dependents. He had no children. Parents are gone. He didn't have to worry about me. So I just assumed, because, you hear that, there's no reason to question it. I wasn't happy about it, but I respected his decision. And I wasn't up on all the details of his case. I wasn't following it on a daily basis. But after the death, and the very next morning, I had to go back to New York to identify his body because I'm the next of kin. And they did the autopsy. And both forensic pathologists that were there, Dr. Roman from the city, it was technically her autopsy. And I had Dr. Barden there because I have the right to have a pathologist there. They came out of the autopsy and they both concurred that this looked more like a homicide than a suicide. And that started raising questions because I thought they'd walk out of the room and say, yeah, unfortunately, your brother committed suicide. And that would be the end of it. Trust me.
Mark, what specifically did they say to make it think that it was a homicide?
Yes, please.
Well, one of the major things was the 3 broken bones in his neck. Now, Dr. Barden has done about 500 autopsies. He's been doing this for over 50 years. So nobody has more experience with prison deaths than Dr. Barden. He was put on a special commission in New York State after the Attica riots in 1970 to investigate prison deaths. So again, no one has more experience than him. And I've spoken to other pathologists, and they say, on a soft hanging, which is supposedly what Jeffrey was supposed to have done, you might get a broken bone, maybe 2, but no one's ever seen 3 broken bones in this kind of hanging. There was another pathologist showed me a report out of the Philippines.
But
where they were investigating.
Your goal is to break your neck I shouldn't be saying this on stream probably, but that's the goal. It's not to strangulate yourself. It's to break your neck.
Broken bones and hangings. And they spoke about a certain percentage have 1 broken bone and a smaller percentage have 2. But there was no mention of 3 broken bones. So that was one of the major factors here.
Well, did you have any sign, though, beforehand? When was the last time you spoke to Jeffrey beforehand? Did you believe that there was any indication that he could kill himself? Was he anxious? Did he worry about this egregious case and all the claims against him?
He apparently attempted suicide a couple months beforehand.
No, well, the last time I spoke to Jeffrey was the day before he got arrested. He was in Paris. He called me from Paris. It was a Thursday night, just a normal, hello, how you doing? 2 brothers speaking. And then the next day he flew back to New York and he got arrested. They picked him up at Teterboro Airport. I never spoke to Jeffrey again after that while he was in jail. So that last conversation, to answer your question, night before he got arrested.
So you didn't know it was coming at that point.
Right. But I know people who did speak to him. I know people who did speak to him, and nobody thought he was suicidal. Even the people spoke to him the day before.
Well, Mark, who would want to kill him? And why do you believe...
His lawyer said he didn't believe he was suicidal, but once again, he attempted suicide.
then all the information we were trying to get to answer some questions should be readily available. But everything's being hidden. Like when the two pathologists said that this looked more like a homicide than a suicide, on the initial death certificate, which was filled out that day because you needed a death certificate to claim the body, the cause of death stated it was pending further investigation. Now, the pathologists I've spoken to said when a death certificate said pending further investigation, it usually takes weeks before you get a more definitive answer because there's supposed to be some kind of investigation. It said pending further study was the actual words, pending further study. So they're supposed to investigate to come up, with the cause. But then a few days later, the chief medical examiner, Barbara Sampson, she calls it a suicide. And without giving any explanation for what investigation was done after that first autopsy. And then Bill Barr, the Attorney General, also claims it's a suicide because nobody went in or out of the tier, which I've explained before is a ridiculous statement. And he claims it's a suicide. Now, if the Attorney General claims it's a suicide, basically, from what I understand, there's no reason to investigate.
Well, there's two things though going on here. I mean, we've heard the DOJ and they're saying, and the FBI say it's a suicide, and they provide an autopsy that says this proves this is a suicide. And then you have medical examiners that say it proves that.
Wait, I got to stop you here. There was one autopsy done by Dr. Roman.
This is fascinating.
And they said it looked more like a homicide. So I don't know what autopsy you're referring to that says it's a suicide because there was only one autopsy.
Well, then what autopsy is the DOJ and the FBI referring to?
Well, that's the question you should be asking them because there was only one autopsy.
Do you have a copy of that? Could you provide that so we can see
it? Yes, I've given that to a number of people, yes.
I would love to see that, so we'll get that on. Well, what about this, though?
After that autopsy was done, we claimed the body. So nobody else had a chance to see the body. And Dr. Sampson, who declared it a suicide, the chief medical examiner, she never saw the body. She wasn't there.
But what about the video? We know that the cell video, the jail video from inside that corridor was released.
Okay.
Does that not prove?
No, because that video doesn't show where Jeff was. They're trying to make it sound like they're showing Jeff's cell door. That was not.
Yeah, Jeff is like back here somewhere on the other side.
They've been released. They're out there. I've also had a photograph of the tier he was on. Now, in that video, in the beginning of the video, they're talking about they're walking Jeffrey into his cell. Number one, you can't tell that that's Jeffrey in that video. I try to blow it up. You can't tell who that person is from the video. And you can't just walk somebody into Jeffrey's cell that way. To get into his cell, which was on the maximum security tier, you have to go up a little flight of stairs. You have to go through
this is brother we're listening to right now.
Door, and then you go into the tier, and Jeffrey's cell was the first tier to the right. If you look into
excuse me for asking this, how do you know that though if you were never able to visit him there? Were you given a tour?
Because soon after the death, we got the photographs that was taken by the medical examiner's office when they went to investigate. Before it was declared a suicide, I have photographs of his cell. I have photographs of the tier. I have photographs of the entrance of the tier. This was given to me, not that long after the death. So these are original photographs of what the place really was. That video is bullshit. I don't know a better term.
No,
it's bullshit.
This is what's more important though at this point, because who do you believe had a motive and the power to have your brother killed inside the jail?
Well, it's an excellent question. I as I've said many times in this interview, I don't like to speculate. I like to stick with facts.
Who had the power and the motive to have your brother killed inside the jail? I wonder who it could be. No idea who could have the power and the motive to have your brother killed inside a jail. It's a complete mystery, an enigma, if you will. An enigma of who might have had the power and the motive to have your brother killed inside a cell. Just complete mystery.
Because if I start speculating, I lose credibility. I also read something else that somebody wrote about me. Number one, they said that I was the older brother. I'm not the older brother. Jeffrey was 18 months older than me. They said that, after the thing, at first I was claiming it was suicide. Then I said he was alive. I never said Jeffrey was alive.
Well, you're with us right now, though. I mean, because I think it's a valid question and not speculation, but in a general sense. I mean, certainly he didn't have he had a lot of enemies because of all the allegations and the cases against him at the time. But what are you thinking that this is something that's even higher than that? Because we certainly have now President Trump trying to say this is no big deal. People are stupid. Republicans who are trying to do this, they were convinced by Democrats. I mean, do you believe that there is some political backing or motivation behind this? I mean, we know Bill Clinton has been in photos with your brother, President Trump. We could go on with more high-powered individuals. Could they have been?
Well, look, the DOJ is obviously covering this stuff up because we're not getting the answers we want. They're releasing videos. They're making ridiculous statements like I said, Kash Patel saying, a suicide when you see one. I had to laugh at that. How many suicides has he seen? As compared to Dr. Bodden, who has seen hundreds, and Dr. Roman, I don't know how many she has seen, but certainly more than Kash Patel. And Kash Patel didn't see the body. He didn't see anything about the suicide. He wasn't in the jail. So how could anybody who wasn't there, who didn't do the autopsy, say, you see a suicide when you know? I mean, it just boggles the mind that he would try to say that and have any credibility.
Do you think this has some sort of connection?
Well, he doesn't have credibility. He never had credibility.
Not been released, and maybe that there's a name in there that could be responsible for your brother's death.
Well, like I said, I wasn't involved with his activities. Jeffrey and I hadn't seen each other for 7 years before he died. We were always in communication on phone and email, so I wasn't privy to who he was with every minute of the day. So I don't know what's in both these files. They talk about a list. I have no idea what kind of list they're looking for or talking about. I could say one thing, knowing Jeffrey, I don't think he was blackmailing people. He had plenty of money. He didn't need to blackmail people. That wasn't who he was, as far as I know.
What do you think about
Well, hold on. Here's the thing is we don't exactly know how he made his money. And some people might want to speculate that he made his money by blackmailing people.
He's now perceived as your brother.
Well, my brother was stupid. He said so himself to me. That's why I could say that.
Oh, I believe that. I believe he's stupid.
He was guilty of that, for sure.
Okay. Well, what do you want to happen now, though, moving forward? I mean, you've been very outspoken about this.
I would like to restart an investigation, looking into the investigation that was not done, because a lot of his stuff is gone. I was told they didn't do like fingerprint stuff in his cell. I don't think they did DNA analysis on the ligature that was around his neck to see who might else have touched that. And we don't know where that is. I mean, who has that? Does the DOJ? DOJ usually doesn't destroy evidence. It's usually put away. Here's one. I tried to get the EMT report from the New York Fire Department because every time the EMTs go out and make a call, they fill out a PCR. It's a pre-hospital care report or a patient care report. It just documents every call they go on. It's just routine. And I was told that I should get that because there's something in that report I should see. The person couldn't tell me because that would violate the HIPAA laws. But he said I should get that. So I've contacted the fire department. And since I wasn't getting anything, I actually went to the fire department headquarters in downtown Brooklyn to request forms. And lo and behold, it doesn't appear in their computer.
What a stupid thing for you to get flagged for.
The case is closed. You should have access, and there's no HIPAA standing for that. So that doesn't make any sense. And why that would happen.
It wasn't. And we know that the fire department guys were there because there's a photograph of them wheeling him out of the, on a gurney, taking him out of the prison on their way to the hospital where he's intubated. They have a tube down his throat and they're trying to squeeze air into his lungs with the balloon. Now, we know from the autopsy that Jeffrey was dead for at least 2 hours. So, and these are trained professionals. Why did they try to make it look like he was still potentially alive? There was no way he was being revived there.
Why do you think so?
Well, somebody was there, and we can't find out who was running the show. Who directed the prison people to move the dead body from the cell to the infirmary? Because when the EMTs got there in short order, Jeffrey's body was already in the infirmary. That goes against all the rules. When you find a dead body, it's not supposed to be moved until the medical examiner shows up to investigate the scene. But he was already in an infirmary. And also I was told that there was somebody with a handheld video camera in the infirmary and all the way to the hospital documenting this. We can't seem to find that videotape.
No way.
Well, what about this? Have your strong words, though, Mark, have they prompted any sort of response from the DOJ or any sort of investigator that may want to pursue this and try to get their hands on this specific evidence that you're looking for?
What, I didn't hear the beginning of that question.
I said, have your words, you could be, you've been outspoken and making lots of claims yourself about what had happened. Has that sparked any interest from investigators or the DOJ or any sort of response for a possible hearing?
Not from the DOJ, but yeah, there are private investigators, the people looking into this, because it doesn't smell right to anybody who looks at all the evidence.
Like bullshit to me.
People look at little bits of things and say, well, maybe it was suicide because of this. But if you look at everything together, it doesn't point that way. Again, my life would have been a lot easier if this was clearly a suicide. Yeah,
is this you though? I mean, simply said though, in your gut, do you believe that his death was not a suicide, that in fact it was politically motivated to protect the image of other people who may have been exposed?
Yeah, I believe he was taken out to protect somebody from whatever dirt Jeffrey had on them.
And do you think that person may have been a president or a former president or somebody high up in the government?
I wouldn't dismiss that.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
Well,
Hillary Clinton.
Encourage more people to investigate. There's more information coming in. There are people who know more about investigating than I do, and they're looking into this, and they tell me they're finding things. I won't report on anything until I know it's a fact, because I only try to stick to facts and not speculating. But there's more stuff coming up, and more, it's looking less and less like a suicide.
Well, we appreciate your insight and your thoughts on this as all of this continues to unfold. It's right in the center of the news.
This isn't going away, is it?